Tonight's a very, very special night because it is my grandmother's fourth yard site. And this is a person that meant a lot to me. This is the type of person that, even without speaking to them, just being in the same room with them, you felt good. You know, sometimes she lived in Brighton Beach, and sometimes I would go visit her, and she was reading a book, I was on my phone, but just being in the presence, in the same room with her, I was happy. And I feel that I don't know too many people are like that, that you just being in the presence, they make you feel good, and you enjoy the presence. My grandmother was born in Georgia in 1935. She was a teacher there. She was teaching English in a school that was that had students that were not the best students. Students in Georgia that were very tough. Guys that caused a lot of trouble, that were doing a lot of trouble in the neighborhood. People that, God forbid, did really bad things. But my grandmother found a way with them, and she was able to handle them, and they respected her, and they always, when they were in her class, they always made sure to listen and behave, and even the parents weren't able to handle them, and sometimes when there was a problem, the parents would call my grandmother. And you know, I think that's a lesson for all of us. I know it's a lesson for me that sometimes in life, you know, we meet people in our life. You know, sometimes they're not the easiest people, but we have to find a way with them, and to find the common ground, even though we are different. Then we came to America. My grandmother came to America with us, and she was a very independent lady. She was very independent. She liked to do everything by herself. At some point, she even got a dog. She started taking care of her dog, and I learned a lot from her. She was a very intelligent woman and a very nice lady, and you know, she always made sure, one thing that she always did, and I could tell everybody, a tip that I could tell everybody to do here, and God willing, when I will have kids one day, I'll do it too. She always spoke to me in Russian. She wanted me to have the language, and even though I would speak to her in English, she would speak to me in Russian. So tonight is her fourth yard site, and I want to remember her, and I want to thank all of you guys, all my friends and family, for being here and to remember her. And I want to say thank you for Chazak. Everybody knows Chazak. Chazak does a lot. One of the main things that they do, they take kids out of public school and they put them in yeshiva, and they're very big into that. So thank you, Chazak. Thank you to my dad that's over there, Dr. Stuck, and thank you for everybody that's here, and thank you for Isaac, our president, and thank you to Harry Rothenberg, our speaker, Esquire. I hear he's a very good lawyer, but hopefully he's going to be a good Torah teacher as well. And of course, let's thank Rabbi Winner for all that he does for the community and to inspire the people. And thank you again for everyone that's here. And today it's a very hard day for me, but I think it's so important to remember people that are close to you. So just want to remember last time, say her name, not the last time, but for the time being, Amy Lubav Bas Arn Yitzhak. Now I'm going to give the microphone over to our spiritual leader of the show, Rabbi Winner.
Good evening, everybody. It's so good to see everyone. Always some familiar faces, always come to the events in the shul. Some new faces. So, Baruch Hashem, like I always say by these events, we have Torah, which you're going to hear, and we had prayer, which we just did, and we have tzedakah. Make sure to give charity. Like we said in Pirkei Avos, this Shabbos, the three pillars that the Torah stands upon. Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim, charity, prayer, and Torah study. So, I have the great pleasure of introducing the speaker. I think it's something unusual that tonight's speaker is different than something we've had before. And we've had Chazak here before. But I think tonight is going to be a little bit unusual, special, unique in a certain way. And let me explain why. So, today was the Bay's Ear, which was the birthday of the Marash. Tonight is the Yartzeit of Rishayla, who's known for his Avos Yisrael. They say he had challah that would keep, if he had his challah would just keep coming out of the bag like the arak would come out of Abu Chatzara, that endlessly would be feeding the poor. So it's a very special night, and one of the sayings of which is about Avos Yisrael, and one of the sayings of the Maharash Shalom Reb Shmuel of Lubavitch was the world up in Kenesh Arunti get men ariber ich sag l'chatchila ariber. The world says if you can't go under, go over. I say go over right away, which is I think a lot what Mr. Rothenberg is all about. So he had two sons. What's unique, I think, about the speaker tonight? So the Maharash had two sons, the Razah, Zalman Aaron, and the Shom Deber, who later became the Rebbe. So when they were children, they would play. What if your father's a Rebbe? What do you play? What game do you play? So you play Rebbe and Chassid, right? So the older brother was Rebbe, the younger brother was Chassid. Later he became the Rebbe, the younger brother. So they played Rebbe and Chassid. So one time, so the younger brother would go to the older brother, as you go to a Rebbe, and you come with a question. And to a Rebbe, you don't only go for a blessing for physical needs, you really go for spiritual needs as well, for tikkun, for tshuva, for guidance, hadracha. So the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch is that you're careful with the peels of nuts on Shabbos, even though, according to other opinions, you don't have to worry about it. If you want to eat a nut, you could peel the nut. But the Chabad is strict with this, that you're careful to eat only shelled nuts. So the Rashab, the Rebbe Rashab, Shom Deber, he had eaten the peanuts or nuts with a shell on Shabbos, and especially he's a grandchild of the Admir Azakin. He felt he needed a tikkun. So he came to so they said, Rebbe, I need a tikkun. So he goes, his brother says, okay, his older brother, sit down, you have your private audience, chidus. And he comes in and he tells him, this is what I did. So the older brother listens and he says, okay, because you did this and this, you have to take care of it, you have to do this and this is your tshuva. Maybe learn this, or daven this, or say this. And this is what you have to do. So later, okay, very good, so he leaves. And later, the older brother sees the younger brother playing. So he says to him, "Was is das? My high? What are you playing? I'm Rebbe, you're Chassid. You came to me with a problem. I gave you an answer. I gave you a solution. Why? What are you playing?" So he says to him, listen to what the younger brother says. Who later became Rebbe. He says to him, "The business can't Rebbe." He says to him, "You're not a Rebbe. Business can't Rebbe. I don't have to listen to you. You're not a Rebbe. Why you not? Why not? Why am I not? Well, I didn't give you good advice." He says, "No, you gave me very good advice. But du hast nicht gekrechtet. Du hast nicht gekrechtet. You didn't give a krecht. You didn't sigh. You didn't go, oi, and then give me the advice. You were too fast. You were too quick. You didn't feel my pain. You don't understand where I'm coming from. You're giving good advice, but you're talking. You don't feel what I'm going through." So, Mr. Rothenberg, for those who Google his name, he's a lawyer. Usually you hear a rabbi who's talking to you, you sometimes think that he is living in a different planet. He doesn't understand where you're coming from. He doesn't understand what you feel. He is just reading the books verbally to you, and he's telling you something that is like fantasy, which is not true, because even a rabbi also has his speckle and knows what the world is. But that's the impression people have that, no. He doesn't know, a rabbi doesn't understand what's flying. But tonight I think we have a person who is in the streets and understands what the world is like. And if you're a lawyer, you understand it even more, because you're dealing with litigation, you're dealing with people, and you can't say like the story of the joke with the father and the wife that had the husband and wife had an argument, and the rabbi said, you're right, and the wife of the rabbi said, how could they both be right? And he says, you're also right. In litigation, doesn't necessarily learn that there's a right, and you're also right. Someone's right, someone's wrong, someone might be lying. Talking about what you would call real life. So when you have a person who is in the trenches in real life, and he has a story to share, or Torah, or inspiration to say, I think it takes on a whole different type of listening that we have to pay attention to his message. So it's really great that he's here, and the title that he has that he has to tell us. I'm sure you read it. The road to heaven is paved with good intentions. The road to heaven is paved with good intentions. So I have a little idea. I'm thinking maybe what you're going to say. But without further ado, please give your utmost attention. I'm sure you will not be disappointed, but very pleased with his words of inspiration that were coming from his heart and will enter surely into the heart.
So I need this or this one? Okay. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
All the way in the back? Yeah. Great. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for the warm welcome and for the words of introduction. And may the neshama have an aliyah. The grandmother on whose behalf we're here to celebrate the yurtzeit, or to commemorate the yurtzeit. So I want to propose to you the following. We'll start off with this. That things are not always what they seem. Okay? So I have a problem when as the Rav said, I'm out on the street, I'm in court, and I handle a particular area of law that all of us have heard about, some of us may have been involved in, hopefully nobody will be involved in the future, but it can happen. I represent people who get injured in very serious accidents. And usually the case settles, sometimes it doesn't. If the case doesn't settle, we have to go into court in front of a jury, and we have a bunch of strangers that come into the room. And the problem is that the insurance companies have done a very good job convincing jurors that our clients are exaggerating, and we're the greedy trial lawyers, and we're here to pull a fast one to try to convince them to pay money that they shouldn't pay. And the biggest problem I have is that everybody is familiar with a particular story of a ridiculous case of somebody who got a tremendous amount of money for no reason, okay? Anybody know what I'm talking about?
No.
The most famous case, McDonald's, okay? Everybody knows about Stella Liebeck. She went into McDonald's drive-thru, she ordered a coffee, she spilled the coffee on herself, and they gave her millions of dollars. Like, is that not the most ridiculous case ever? And it happened. And the problem is that every juror knows about that case. So when they come in, the defense attorney, they're looking at him saying, yeah, okay, you better be on top of those guys. And they're looking at us like, yeah, okay. What are you going to try to convince us? You think we're as stupid as the jury in the McDonald's case? We're going to give millions because your client, stubbed his or her toe? So I say to them, wasn't that case ridiculous? Everybody says yes. I said, let me just ask you to have an open mind. I'm going to give you a few facts about that case, okay? So here are the facts that I give them. McDonald's was getting complaints that its coffee from its drive-thrus was too cold. People were complaining. What is this? Come on, I paid for coffee. This isn't hot. I want hot coffee. Who wants cold coffee? So McDonald's hired a very expensive, well-known consulting firm. I think it was McKinsey. And they went in, and they spent a lot of time, and they gave them a glossy report, many pages long, and they said, we figured out what the problem is. You're using these old urns. They only heat from the very bottom, so it's not heated consistently. So the coffee at the very bottom gets very hot. The coffee at the top is not as hot. Drive-through in the morning, you start sending out a lot of cups. The first few cups will be very hot. The top cups, not as hot. So you have three options to fix this problem. Option number one, get new urns with a coil that goes through the entire urn. Instead of the heating element only being on the bottom, it'll heat the coffee evenly, so even the last cups from the top will be hot. That will cost you, imagine replacing all the urns in all the McDonald's in the United States, right? That'll cost you $100 million. Option two, your cups are a little too flimsy. So even if it's hot, when it goes into the cup, the cool air hits it and dissipates quickly, so you can replace all the cups. Use a thicker styrofoam cup. That'll cost you $30 million. Option three, tell every manager in every McDonald's across the nation to go over to the urn and turn it up to the highest setting. Now you'll superheat the coffee, and so the cups even at the top will still be hot, and it'll stay hotter longer because it's going into the cup hotter. Great, so McDonald's looks at the three options. They say, okay, let's see, 100 million, whatever it is, 20, 30, 40, 50 million, or free. And they say, we'll go with free. Okay, so far so good. They tell all the managers, go to the urns, turn it up to the highest setting. They turn it up to the highest setting. Immediately, McDonald's starts getting different complaints. What kind of complaints do you think they're getting? People are burning themselves on the coffee. People are burning their lips. People are burning their bodies. And McDonald's says, all right, whatever. Hey, listen, okay, we'll have a few lawsuits. So what? Okay? So when Stella goes in and orders her coffee, she understands she's risking that if that coffee spills, she may ruin her skirt, or at least have to take it to the dry cleaners. She does not realize in her wildest imaginings that if that coffee spills, because McDonald decided to superheat it, the plaintiff's lawyer showed that Burger King was heating their coffee to 125 degrees, and Arby's was 130, and Denny's was 127, and McDonald's was like 185. Off the charts. And they had warnings of other people that got scalded. Stella didn't know that if her coffee spills, which can happen, she's going to have to go to the hospital and have multiple surgeries? She didn't know that. So the jury heard that and said, you know what? We're going to teach McDonald's a lesson. We're going to hit them for a big number. So they awarded 1 day's worth of profit for coffee sales of McDonald's. That was it. 1 day. They gave her a compensatory award, and they tacked on a punitive award of 1 day's worth of coffee sales. So I ask you, does that jury verdict still sound so crazy now that you heard the story? Not quite as crazy, right? Things are not always what they seem. Okay. So now with that backdrop, let's talk about Shavuos. Let's talk about Megillas Rus. On Shavuos, we meet Rus. It's our one time of the year that we get to hear about her. We get to hear her story. So what's her story? So there's a fellow, well-known fellow in Israel, Elimelech. He's married to Naomi. And there's a famine, and people are coming, knocking on their door nonstop, and they decide to leave. And they bring their sons with them. And their sons go out, and they both meet very nice girls. I wish I could say very nice Jewish girls, but they meet two girls out in Moab. Okay, one of them is Ruth the Moabite, and one of them is her sister, Orpah. And these sons marry these two girls. And then Elimelech dies, the father, and then the two sons die, and Naomi says, time for me to go back home to Israel. Okay? So she announces she's going home, and her daughters-in-law in this incredibly beautiful, moving scene, they're going with her, and she says, ladies, go back home. Go back home. Like, I don't have another son, and even if I got married and had a son, that you're going to wait for him, it just doesn't make sense. Go back home, okay? And Orpah kisses her and goes back home. And Ruth says to her in one of the most beautiful passages that exist in all of the Tanakh, she says, wherever you go, I'll go, and your God is my God, and where you're buried, I'll be buried. So she's like, I'm with you, and I'm coming. And when she sees how sincere she is, when Naomi sees how sincere Ruth is, she says, okay, come with me. And she takes her along, and Ruth ends up marrying Boaz, the leader of the Jewish people, and they have a kid, and eventually, a few generations later, they have a young guy you may have heard of, the great-grandson. His name is David, becomes the king. David HaMelech comes from this relationship, from Ruth and Boaz. Now, here's the tricky part. The question is this. We know that when it comes time for Boaz to marry Ruth, he says to her, I have a problem. I'm willing to marry you, but there's a closer relative and I have to offer it to him first. What is going on there? So there's something called yibum. The English translation is levirate marriage. That's the fancy term for it. And the way it works under Torah law is that if a man and woman are married, the man dies and they don't have children together, that man's brother is supposed to either marry that woman or release her in a ceremony called chalitza. Okay? So what's going on, the rabbis explain, is that this is a form of levirate marriage. Boaz wasn't the brother, but it's a form of levirate marriage, meaning that he's feeling that there has to be a relative, and since there's a closer relative, I have to first offer him. Okay? So let's think about this for a second, right? Boaz is saying that the deceased's wife is here, and because of this system we have in place, we have to first offer the closer relative to marry her. Now, if I ask you the following question, when Ruth married her husband, was she Jewish? The answer resoundingly must be yes. And I'll prove this to you, okay? Imagine a man goes out and marries a non-Jewish woman, and the man dies. A Jewish man marries a non-Jewish woman, and the man dies. Do you think we say to his Jewish brother, you have to marry her? Her husband died. What are you talking about? He married out. I now have to marry a non-Jewish woman? Of course not. Of course not. So it has to be, there's no question, it must be that Ruth converted to Yiddishkeit before they got married. Because if not, there's no way that this yibum, the levirate marriage, kicks in. Boaz would not be saying to her, well, there's a closer relative. Has to be. right? That she converted before they got married. Here's the problem. If they converted before they got married, what in the world is Naomi doing telling Rus and Orpah, go back to your land, go back to your gods, go back? Are you kidding me? A woman converts, comes in from the outside world, she converts to Judaism, and she marries a nice Jewish man, and he passes away. Do we say to her, go back to your land, go back to your God? She's Jewish. What are you talking about? What in the world is Naomi doing? And in fact, we learn the laws of conversion from this. Rus is the paradigm of conversion. It's actually very interesting gematria, the representation of letters. Aleph is 1 and Beis is 2. So if you look at the letters, you'll see the following. Rus, her gematria of her name, the letters in her name add up to 606. It's not an accident. Why? Because she started off non-Jewish. Non-Jews have the 7 Noachide laws, the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. When she converted, she added on how many mitzvahs to get to 613? She added on 606. So that's in her name. It's built into her name. She's the 606 plus the 7. It's interesting. Yisro, Moshe's father-in-law, also has the 606 in his name. He has an extra yud. Why? Because he was there when the 10 Commandments were given. You're there when the 10 Commandments are given. We're not learning laws of conversion from you. So we learned them out from Rus. And the rabbis say, you see from this that what Naomi did was she taught her some laws, and that's how she pushed her away. When somebody comes to us and they expressed an interest in Judaism, we say, oh, come on, we know why you're trying to convert. You walked into the Marais, you ate a great steak, or you came to Simchas Torah, it was the greatest party you ever saw, or you missed Halloween, you came to Purim, we know why you're doing this. No, we say to them, listen, it's not so simple. We teach them some laws, and an easy law and a hard law, and we try to push them away. However, once we see that they're sincere, we grab them. So you see this exactly what Naomi was doing. Teach her a couple laws, see if she's sincere. Oh, she's sincere, grab her. So it seems like she's clearly not Jewish yet. And that's why Naomi's saying, go back. Once she says, no, I want to convert. Okay, come with me. So how do you reconcile this? Has to be that she converted first, because otherwise the laws of Yibum don't apply. Boaz wouldn't be saying, I have to go to the closer relative. On the other hand, it has to be that she did not convert first, because otherwise, why is Naomi telling her to go back to her land? So the way my Rabbi Uziel Malevsky, Zatzal, explained this was as follows. Naomi had a problem, because Naomi's going back to the Jewish people, and she's going to be bringing back these 2 Moabite princesses, who might not get the greatest welcome, okay? And she doesn't know, were they sincere? How is she supposed to tell? Her husbands, come on, they were Jewish men, so obviously they were fantastically good looking, right? And they were wealthy. So maybe they converted them because they fell in love with my sons. Or maybe they converted because they were really sincere. How do I know? I can't bring them back. I can't put them through this unless they're sincere. So she's testing their sincerity. She tests their sincerity and sees. For sure they converted before. She sees, Orpah converted before because she was in love with her husband. She goes back right away. Not a sincere conversion. Rus, she sees, when she converted, it was real. So she's testing their sincerity. Rus, of course, converted beforehand. That's why there's Yibum. But she's trying to push her away to test whether it was a sincere conversion. Because we need to know what was going on in their minds when it happened. How can we tell? And I'll give you a current example of this, okay? How we can see a difference. I was in front of a judge once in the Bronx, Hispanic judge, and we are picking a trial date. So he says, okay, how about June, whatever, very beginning of June. So I take my phone, my old BlackBerry, I go to the calendar, and I say, I'm so sorry, Your Honor, I can't start the trial on that date. It's a Jewish holiday. He looks at me and says, Mr. Rothenberg, I have been on the bench in New York, here in the Bronx, for 30 years. And I know there's Passover in the spring, there are the high holidays in the fall, there's no Jewish holiday in the summer. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't try that on me. I said, Your Honor, it's Shavuos. He said, what's that? I said, well, you probably know the story of Passover. There was the Exodus, the Jewish people. God took them out with the signs and the wonders and the plagues and the sea. He goes, yeah, of course. I know about that for the Bible. I said, well, 50 days later, remember, Moses goes up on the mountain. You probably heard that story also. And he brings down the tablets and he smashes them, the golden calf. He says, yeah, I heard. I said, we have a holiday 50 days later that celebrates when the Jews got the Torah. He says, I'm so sorry. I never heard of that one before. Now, how is it possible? How is it possible? He's been on the bench 30 years. He never had a Jewish attorney. He knows the holidays. He knows Passover. He knows Rosh Hashanah. He knows Yom Kippur. How does he not know Shavuos? You know why he doesn't know Shavuos? Because every Jew knows when Passover is. You could be wildly assimilated, okay? Wildly assimilated. But, I'm going to a Seder with my mother, with my grandmother, with my puppy, with my sister, with my aunt, with my uncle. You have a Seder. What do you think? I'm not Jewish? And you know when Yom Kippur is. A Jew doesn't know when Yom Kippur is? Very high percentage, right? Shavuos? Who knows what Shavuos is? Outside this room, I've lost track of the number of times when I say to somebody, a Jewish client, a Jewish colleague, a Jewish defense attorney, next week I won't be reachable, Jewish holiday. Well, what Jewish holiday? Like, what are you talking about? So I have a theory for why it is that every Jew knows about Passover, but so few Jews know about Shavuos, and this is the reason. When I go out every day and I get the mail, or if I come home and the mail is sitting in my kitchen, I'm always excited, as all of you I'm sure are, when I open up an envelope and there's a check inside. The greatest thing ever, right? Especially if it's a check you weren't expecting. Especially if it's a check you weren't expecting and it's a nice one. Hey, look at that, it's a check. I'm not nearly as excited when I open up an envelope and there's a bill inside. Like, bill, especially if it wasn't you weren't expecting. And especially if it's a significant one. Pesach, Passover, is a check in the mail. God says, you're free. And we say, great, when do we celebrate? Well, you gotta eat I'll eat for freedom. I'm even willing to eat cardboard. I will eat matzah, at least for one night. I'll do a whole Seder, I'm free. Shavuot says, oh, by the way, there's a bill now to pay. Here's the Torah, 613 mitzvahs. A bill? Okay, a bill I can forget about. So the freedom, the check, that we remember. The bill, maybe I don't remember. So the problem is that if we over-celebrate Passover and we under-celebrate Shavuos, then we've got a problem. Because God sees what's going on. Like, the whole reason you were celebrating Passover shouldn't have just been because you were freed. You were freed from one master so that you could serve God. And so if you're under-celebrating Shavuos and over-celebrating Passover, you're sort of telling him, God, I love the freedom part. I don't like the part about having to serve you. So we have to be careful about that, because you can see retroactively that if your Passover celebration is so much more intense and so much more excited about Passover versus Shavuos, you might be sending the wrong message. Like, I love it when it's freedom. I don't like it at all when I have to do anything, for you upstairs. Second thing I want to mention, same topic, is that thoughts matter at the time of the action. We see this from Rus and Orpah. You looked at them, two women, both converting. There is no way anybody's going to tell the difference. If you were at the wedding, you said, look at those two beautiful Jewish girls. They just converted. Wonderful. There's no way to tell. But later we found out that one was sincere and one wasn't. So I want to tell you another story. Some of you may have heard it already. Even if you heard it, it's worth hearing it again. And anybody who didn't hear it, this is a story you won't soon forget. Okay. Rav Moshe Feinstein shares this story, that when he was a young rabbi in Russia, a fellow in the community who was also a rabbi got very sick, deathly ill. And there were people coming in to visit him, and shortly before he passed away, he called for Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe showed up to visit him, and he asked other people to leave the room, and he said to Rav Moshe, I want to explain to you what happened. He says, well, what do you mean what happened? Like, what do you mean what happened? You got sick. What do you mean what happened? He says, no, I want to explain to you what happened. He said, earlier this week, I gave a class, a Parsha class. I gave a shiur on the Parsha. And in that class, we were talking about modesty. And I was contrasting the incredible modesty of the Jewish people and of B'nos Yisrael, the Jewish girls, with the immodesty of the outside world. And I used as an example, the ultimate example, the daughters of Lot. What did the daughters of Lot do? The daughters of Lot were saved from Sodom by an angel. They thought the world was destroyed. And so they went on successive nights and they were with their father. Okay? And they both became pregnant and they both gave birth. And they called the sons Moav. This is where Rus comes from. Moav. Moav. May-av. From my father. That's what they named the baby. Ammon, like my nation. He says, can you imagine something less modest? Okay, understand, you thought, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt, you thought the world had ended, you had to do this, but you have to advertise it? You call the kid Moav? You call the kid Ammon? That's the immodesty of the non-Jewish world. He said, I went to sleep that night, and I had a dream. And in my dream, the daughters of Lot appeared to me. And they said, Rabbi, we take offense at what you said about us, and we want to tell you the whole story, because you really should have given us the benefit of the doubt. We were saved from Sodom by an angel. Spirited away by an angel. Okay? And then all of Sodom, after an angel saved us, was destroyed. Don't you think we could have told the world when we showed up pregnant, you won't believe what happened? An angel saved us, and then immaculate conception. Yeah, it was immaculate. No father. But we knew that someday, some guy was going to come and try to convince the world that there's a such thing as immaculate conception. So at the cost of embarrassing ourselves for the rest of our lives and for eternity, every time somebody reads that story, we said, no, we're going to tell the world what happened. We're going to name those kids Moav and Ammon. Send out the message, there's no such thing as immaculate conception. So that's what we did. We bore the embarrassment through all these centuries to send out that message. And you went and judged us and said we were immodest. And unfortunately, there's a decree in heaven, you're going to get sick and you're going to pass away. Now, from the first time I heard that story, ever since then, I said to myself, I can't imagine a case future where I'm not going to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. Who in their wildest imagining reads that story and says, wow, look what they did. How do you like that? They took one for the team. Of course you read that saying. It's the most immodest thing imaginable. But you got to people the benefit of the doubt. When you can't get inside someone's head and you don't know what they're thinking. That story, you could read it 1,000 times without saying, and if I said to you before telling you the story, well, help me out here, give them the benefit of the doubt. You'd say, I don't know, the benefit of the doubt. Why are you going to name your kid from my father? Now you understand. So you got to give the benefit of the doubt. And what matters is what's inside someone's head, and you don't know what's in someone's head. They said something to you that wasn't nice, it was insulting. You don't know what was going on. You don't know if they were sick, if they were having a terrible day, if they were having a really, really, really terrible day, if they had some kind of sorrows at home, they didn't mean it, they didn't realize, you weren't in their head. And people get convinced. See, it's so interesting. When I say something that insults someone else, I said, no, you don't understand, I didn't, oh my goodness, it just happened to me 2 days ago. I mentioned to someone, I said, yeah, and so did this, and the person said to me, you know that I helped out on that. It was in my office. I said, you're right, I'm so sorry. Totally insulted. I'm like, what do you mean? I just forgot. Like somebody else was in charge of it. I forgot that this other person had helped out. Totally. So of course, no, I fell over myself. I didn't realize, of course, because I knew that person was working on it. I didn't realize. I should have realized. And a million excuses. When we do something wrong, we have a million excuses that we want the other person to accept. When somebody does something wrong to us, there's no such thing as an excuse. No, you meant it. You knew you were insulting me. You knew I'd be upset. You knew I'd be offended. And you did it anyway. If you had done it, you want the benefit of the doubt. We won't give it a benefit of the doubt. We have to give other people the same benefit of the doubt that we want. There's another example of this, that thoughts matter, as follows. So, in one of the most important scenes in the entire Torah, Abraham is told by God, Abraham, go sacrifice your son whom you love, Isaac, doesn't ask any questions. Just goes and gets the knife, okay? And he's ready to sacrifice him, and the angel, grabs his hip, stop, and he stops him, okay? And then there's a ram comes running towards him, because the ram is there like he's going to be the sacrifice instead. And the ram, the Torah tells us, gets caught in the thicket, gets caught in a bush. Now, I don't know how much time you spend watching animals. Imagine a ram is just running straight forward, right? And it just runs right into a bush? What are you talking about? Animals don't just, and it gets caught. Not only does it run into a bush, it runs into the bush so hard that it gets caught in the bush. Is it a blind ram? What is going on? So the Medrash tells us, you know what that bush came from? It wasn't there. Satan, the Satan, created the bush in order to trap the ram. Why? Because he knew that Abraham was going to bring him as a sacrifice, and he wanted to delay him. Now, let me ask you something. If you're Abraham, and you just demonstrated your willingness to sacrifice your son, and you see a ram and you say, you know what, instead I'm going to sacrifice the ram, and the ram gets caught in a bush, are you going to say, oh, for crying out loud, you know what, I don't have time, I got to go hack him through the bush, it's going to take an extra 5 minutes, you know what, forget it, I'll bring a sacrifice another day. Seriously? The guy who was willing to sacrifice his kid, you don't think he's going to take the extra 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes? He's got the sharp knife in his hand and just hack through the bush and get the ram, which is what he does. So what is the Satan thinking? And the answer the rabbis explain is the Satan's thinking like this. Abraham right now, after showing his willingness to sacrifice his son, is on the highest level any human's been on. If I could just delay him a little bit, it'll knock him down a few pegs. He won't be on that same level of closeness. And I know that intentions make a difference. So even if I could just an extra 5 minutes, he's not going to be on that same sublime level, because thoughts make a difference. Now, here's something that's scary. Thoughts not only matter at the time of the action, but they continue to matter after the action. Okay, you'll say, well, what do you mean? I did it. And so, listen to this. Immediately after, let's stay with the same story, so we don't have to change it to a different place. Immediately after Abraham shows his willingness to sacrifice his son, Yitzchak, Isaac, Sarah gets word of this. The Medrash tells us that the Satan ran and told her, did you hear what happened? Your husband went and he sacrificed your son. And she has a heart attack, and she dies. Okay, I don't have time to explain exactly what's going on, but what's the Sutton's reasoning? Okay, the Sutton is a sore loser. Oh, you know what? I tried to convince Abraham not to do it. I wasn't able to. He went ahead and did it. But I'll get him. I'll kill his wife. Like, what's he doing? So here's the answer that is so important. What he's doing is he's hoping that Avram's going to come home, find out that Sarah heard the news and had a heart attack, and regret that he took his son to be sacrificed. He's going to regret the mitzvah. If he regrets the mitzvah, he loses it. You write a check to tzedakah, and then you say afterwards, why did I give that much? I got talked into it. Why did I get? You can lose the mitzvah. So you have to be very, very careful. You did the mitzvah. Don't regret doing the mitzvah. I get it. Somebody asked you for a ride. This happened once to my wife. We were living I was in law school. We were living in Boston. She's at the supermarket. A woman came up to her, an elderly woman. Oh, you driving home? Yes. Could you give me a ride? Sure. Where are you? She said, I'm a few minutes away. So she starts driving and driving and driving and driving. She lived like a half an hour drive away. Like, what? But that can happen sometimes. But if you're sitting there seething, like, I can't believe it. You're doing the mitzvah anyway. Don't regret it. If you regret it, you lose it. The thought doesn't only matter at the time you're doing it. It continues to matter afterwards. And then the last topic I want to talk about is the following. That we've seen that thoughts matter. We've seen that things are not always what they seem. We've seen that thoughts continue to matter afterwards. And what I think we have to be mindful of is that God keeps track of our thoughts. Okay? So I want to tell you a couple things on this topic. This is going back maybe, I'm going to say 12 years ago, plus or minus. I had this idea. And it was around Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur time when all of us or many of us we often will make resolutions like, what's going to be my New Year's resolution for Rosh Hashanah? It's a nice thing to do. And we say, take on something small that you're going to do. So I had thought about it and I said, you know what? I know what I'm going to do. I have, thank God, a lot of people come through my doors. I often have people over for Shabbat. More often than not, it's somebody that does not typically have a Shabbat. Many times, more often than not, it's their first Shabbat ever. And I try my best to keep in touch with them. It's not always so easy. And I said to myself one day, every single week, I always prepare a Devar Torah to tell over at the table, especially if we're having guests. So why don't I invite some of these people on Sunday night, and we'll do 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I'll send out an email. I have a conference center on my firm. It can hold up to like 50 people. And whatever we're going to get, 5 people, 10 people. And I'll just tell over whatever I told over Friday night. Somebody who's not religious is not going to say, wait 1 second. You just told it over from Achremos. It's already Kedoshim. We're on Sunday already. Come on. Somebody's just beginning their Jewish journey is going to be holding that they're going to be upset. So what? It was the Devar Torah from the Shabbos the day before. Meaning I don't need to prepare. I've already prepared it. All I have to do is make a list, send it out, and I'll send out a number, and however many people tune in, great, wonderful, fine. So that's my New Year's resolution, and that's what I'm going to do. Rosh Hashanah, I'm going to do this. Then, of course, it's the Sarah Tshuva, then it's Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur ends with Sukkot, and then it's Sukkot, and then it's the Chol Hamoed activities, or fighting over what to do, and then doing an activity, and then it's Shemini Atzeres, it's Simchas Torah, and then I've been out of work, for all these days, so now I have to catch up, and the next thing you know, it's Thanksgiving week, and that's very busy, and the next thing you know, I don't do it. I didn't do it. I was going to do it. I didn't do it. Okay. So now we come to the next year. So Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and I say to myself, you made a resolution last year and you didn't do it. This year you're going to do it. So in order to concretize it, I sat down and I made a list. And I couldn't believe how many names I had. I had something like 50 names on the list of people. That doesn't mean that 50 people are going to tune in, but I had like 50 people, friends, acquaintances, colleagues, maybe a couple people from my firm, people that had come to Shabbat meals. I have 50 people that I could send this out to. If 10 show up, that'd be unbelievable. Imagine 10 people calling in to listen to, a Devar Torah, 5, 10, 15 minutes a week, and all of them were people that they're not doing any study the rest of the week. In other words, this was for people that I know, if they tune in, it's the only Jewish study they're doing that week. 50 people. And on this time, there is nothing to talk about. I am going to do this. But then it was Rosh Hashanah, and then it was the Sarah Tshuva, 10 days repentance, then it was Yom Kippur, and then after Yom Kippur, we went right into Sukkot, and then it was Chol Hamoed, with the kids and the trips. And then after Chol Hamoed, you're so backed up at work. And the next thing you know, it's Thanksgiving, and I didn't do it. 2 years in a row, I made this resolution, and I didn't do it. It wasn't like I did it and then I stopped it. I didn't even do it. I was very upset about it. I was very embarrassed about it, and I didn't do anything about it. I just didn't do it. So now it's about March, after the second time when I didn't do it. And I spoke at an event, a local event in Passaic, New Jersey, where I live, for Partners in Torah. And several days later, I'm in shul, And the head of Parnas and Torah, Rabbi Gewirtz, comes up to me. He says, can I speak to you for a few minutes? Sure. He says, I've had this idea for some time. What I want to do is a video once a week on the Parsha. And it's going to be about 5 minutes long. And I want to know if you're interested. I said, sure, put me on the list. I'll be, one of the people. He said, no, I want to know if you're interested in doing it every week. I said, every week? I said, well, where am I going to find the time? Like, I'm to go to a studio and film it. Like, I'm very busy. He said, no. We will send somebody to your house to film it. You just have to prepare it and deliver it. I said, you send somebody to my house to film it, and who's going to go to? He says, it'll go to anybody. He goes, it'll go to our list. You could give me a list. And as soon as he says, you could give me a list, I said to myself, I almost did this. I didn't do it to him, but in my mind, I was going like this. Well done. Very well done. It was like Hashem saying, I'm going to send somebody to your house. You're going to do this, and you're going to send it out to that list. You made the list already, okay? Now, granted, I didn't know what I was getting into. Very different telling over something you've already prepared than having to prepare that week, every week. And now it has been, thank God, more than 10 years, and every Wednesday night, sometimes earlier, but usually Wednesday night, no matter how long or late it takes me, I sit down and I film a 3-4 minute video. It used to be for Parnas and Torah, now it's for my alma mater for Or Sameach. It's easy to find. I'll send it out. We'll have somebody will send it out to you so you can find it. And B'li Ayin Hara, thousands of people watch it. And I have no doubt that I had the genuine thought, and Hashem, in my mind, who knows? Listen, I don't know what Hashem thinks, but at least in my mind, it feels like that's a really good idea. And you know what? If you're not going to do it, I'm going to put you into it. Like, go do it. Okay, so sometimes we have a great thought, and we just don't get around to do it. And then years later, and it goes by, it was a good idea. The rabbi said I should study with somebody. One of these days, I have a friend, a very, very close friend. And I mentioned to him once, you have a chavrusa? He said, of course I have a chavrusa. Like he was offended. He said, of course I have a chavrusa. I said, what are you learning? He said, I have a chavrusa. I said, no, I know, but what are you learning? He said, I have a chavrusa. So now I get wind, like, wait, what's going on? Who's your chavrusa? He tells me the name. I said, so when do you learn? He goes, we have a chavrusa. In other words, he had a friend, so they call each other chavrusas. They don't actually learn. They're chavrusas. In other words, if they would ever sit down, maybe Shavuos night, they sit for an hour or two. Okay? So we could go through our lives like that. We could go literally through our lives of all counting the things that I'm going to do that don't get done. And the last one's this, when it comes to thoughts. There is a almost impossible to understand, but brutal passage in the Torah that you have to appreciate. You have to slow it down and freeze the frame and read it carefully, okay? It's in the middle of the description of the things that are going to happen to us if we don't obey the Torah, okay? And so first it goes through, God tells us all the incredible things that are going to happen if we do observe, and then he goes through all the horrible things that are going to happen if we don't observe. And when I say horrible, I mean horrible. Think Holocaust level horrible. Horrible, it's in there. Like it's, we can't ever say, he didn't warn us. Oh, he warned us. And then Hashem explains, God explains, do you know why I'm going to do this to you? He says, because kasher lo avadati besimcha uvetuv levav. Because you didn't obey my commands with happiness and with gladness of heart. Again, because you didn't obey my commands with happiness and gladness of heart. You would expect it to say, because you didn't observe my commands. It's not what it says. You did observe the commands, but you didn't observe the commands with a smile on your face. You know what this is the equivalent of? This is the equivalent of an A student. It's somebody who's just a razor. Knows the question, that annoying, you always have that classmate, right? The teacher says, okay, so how about, and the kid's already got his hand in the air. Like the teacher doesn't even finish the question. It's like, you're so annoying, right? And then of course, the teacher calls him and he's got the answer right? You could have somebody who goes into the test, gets every single answer right, and the teacher gives back the test, and the grade is F. But next to every answer, check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark. So the kid gets it and says, okay, I guess the teacher is drinking that night. I mean, what do you mean F? Like I got every single question right, as I always do. So the kid meekly, humbly goes to the teacher and says, Ms. So-and-so or Rabbi so-and-so, I got my, could I just ask a question? Sure. I got my test back, and every question has a check mark in red, which is what you always write when I got it right. Then it says F, so I think there was a mistake. And the teacher or the Rebbe says, no, there's no mistake. But what do you mean I got all of them right? And the teacher or the Rebbe says, I know, but I was watching you when you were taking that final, and you had a frown on your face. Oh, what? Yeah, you had a frown on. I could tell. You were not taking that test besimcha uvetuv levav. Like, what is Hashem saying? He's telling us this. You can do all the mitzvahs. You can check them all off. I prayed today, and I gave charity today, and I put on my tefillin today, and I wore my yarmulke today, and I wore my tzitzis today, and I wore a sheitel today, and I baked challah and took the challah off, and I kept Shabbos. But you did it with a frown. You did it like, oh, okay, I guess I have to, oh, I can't go out tonight. I guess I have to go to synagogue instead. No credit. Not only no credit, getting punished for that. So it's all important, right? Not only do we have the right intentions while we do the action, whether somebody can tell or not, you know what's going on in your head. And not only is it important to keep that right intention, don't regret it because you're going to lose the mitzvah. But when you do this, it's all the difference in the world. When somebody rings your bell and you're in the middle of dinner, something's going on and they're collecting tzedakah and you're like, oh, okay, here you go, and throw it out at them. Versus, hey, how you doing? And you hand them with a smile. It's all the difference in the world. So thank you for listening, and I hope this will help all of us get ready for Shavuos, and hopefully we'll all have a wonderful holiday and we'll celebrate it with at least as much enthusiasm as we celebrated Pesach. Thanks for listening. Be well.